Hey, everybody. You know how much I love indie creators, and I have one on the show today. His name is Chris, and he is with Houndsong Games, and he has a free to play TTRPG called Relict. I will have links to all of this information down below, but Chris is fantastic. He actually has a Kickstarter to help expand some of what he's doing and produce some physical product for you. I can't wait for you to meet him. That interview starts now. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Mike, good to see you. Thanks for
Good
having
to
me.
see you. I'm glad we were able to connect.
Me too. Me too. This will be fun.
Well, I know you've been busy because you have a Kickstarter running right now for Relict
Yes.
RPG, which is I've watched some bits and bobs about it, and it looks amazing. And it's taking you some time to produce, and you're doing it out of the goodness of your own heart because everything is free, playable right off your website, which I'll link down below.
Just
Well, why
correct.
don't you tell me more about Relic RPG and what it's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Relic is a free system. It's a tabletop RPG system like your Pathfinders, your D&Ds, your GURPS if you want. But it is a free system that I developed and illustrated myself. Spent about quite a year and a half on it. I keep saying it's a little over a year at this point. We're coming up on 18 months at some point in the near future here. And as you mentioned, the whole thing is totally free on it's relicrpg.com. You don't need an account, you don't need a subscription or a battle pass or any kind of microtransaction not all on. The goal is to put the entire thing. Like, I'm sorry if you hear my cat screaming in the background.
I have five of them. I am not worried.
Okay. Um, as I was saying. The entire system, it's kind of in a late beta stage right now, so I'm still constantly adding and tweaking stuff. So if you go on there, you might run across like a page where it's like, Chris is coming back to add another monster here or something like but the entire thing is going to go also under an open gaming license. Right now, I think I can say that the Orc license from ISO looks like the strong frontrunner candidate. That's been a process to find the appropriate one for that to go under. But that one is it's checking all the right boxes for me. I'm just going to make sure I dotted my I's, crossed my T's, and everything. But that will go under an open license. So if you in the future or whoever else wants to create your own product using the Relic system, you don't need my permission to do it. I can't come back or someone can't buy my estate in 50 years, 100 years, whatever, and come back and change and take the license away. Like that should all be locked in.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an important piece for all of you who are watching. If you remember the OGL debacle with Wizards of the Coast, this has been something that has been a concern for a lot of people, even after Wizards of the Coast reversed their stance and did whatever tap dancing they needed to do. Being able to have a product where you can freely create add-ons for yourself, either for free or to monetize, is a huge thing. So I'm sure most people who are watching appreciate you going through the due diligence to find the right gaming license.
Yeah, that's actually that. Funnily enough, was the inciting incident that one pushed me to shift to focus on Relic because Relic was kind of like a side project that I was playing around with and just having fun with while I was working on some 5e. And two was the deciding factor on I wasn't sure if it was going to go up as like was it a book, PDF or whatever this that, and the other thing. It was like no, actually, after all this mess, this is why it's just going on a website that's free for anyone to get on and use because it's kind of a skullduggery proofing mechanism. So it's like, nope, it's there, it's out there. You can't take it back.
Yeah, right. No take backsies.
Exactly.
So why don't you tell me a little bit more about the system? Now, I find it interesting because there is, so for traditional D&D players and a lot of RPG systems, the way injuries are handled,
Yes.
is very instantaneously and gratifyingly taken care of. Your system, it takes into account some grievous wounds and things like that that may take quite a long time for you to be able to get back in action. But why don't you tell me a little bit more about the system in general?
Yeah, so Relic, once it was like, well, we're doing something weird and different, let's have some fun with it. That started as an experiment. I've got a local kind of great local to me that I do a lot of play testing and like, hey, I've got a weird idea, let's do this. And this wound up being the thing that stuck because it was a lot of fun. So we player characters in Relic don't have hit points like in your D&D. What you have instead is a page in your character sheet, your character packet, have you is a series of small charts. Sexy, I know. But what you do is, if you say you take 5 slashing damage, you go to the slashing damage column and you check off 5 boxes. And you might hit a little milestone in there that says, well, now you've taken a greater aim. You've done this. And all of those charts are a little bit different for different damage types. So like your burning one, big surprise here, you catch fire. Take too much burning. Weird.
Yeah.
The acid one can melt your armor. The psychic one can inflict like frightened conditions. And that, sounds a little more esoteric and complicated in the abstract, but the most common response I've gotten when people start playing the system, oh, this looked complicated, but it immediately made sense. Because it's all visual. I'm an industrial designer, I'm a graphic designer, I have a lot of background and that kind of thing. So my bias is to make visual and like one level errant in terms of information presentation. So I tell people don't bother trying to memorize it, just check off boxes. Like treat it like moving a piece in an old school Monopoly board or something. Oh, you hit an injury space. Great. This happens and it's right there on the sheet.
Right.
And then you mentioned the lingering injuries and stuff. So that's all damage that happens during a combat encounter. Those can trigger greater injuries. They're called afflictions, which might be like a broken bone or a head injury or something that have like debuffs and that kind of thing. Stick with you from encounter. There are ways to remove that through certain magic or special items and what have you, different class abilities and such. But they're relatively rare. They're balanced, so if you're in like a balanced to challenging campaign, you probably won't be able to keep up with all of them that happen with your party. You've got to prioritize a little bit amongst, strategize with your friends. And the purpose of that is to kind of divide things into these quest arcs that you run throughout a campaign. So you're stacking up injuries as you're going through sessions and moving towards a conclusion, fight the boss, kill the bad guy, save the day, whatever. You go into those later fights being a little bit like, okay, our wizard's hurt his foot. Like, we've got to make sure that we can keep it. And so it makes the player strategize and kind of come up with solutions that you wouldn't normally have if you're just playing like -5 +5, -5 +5, whatever. Short rest, everything's fine. And what was really exciting about it for me is it winds up tying in a lot of roleplay moments into and vice versa. My players have been telling me that like, oh, what this does is like, there are combats in every tabletop game, as I'm sure you know, where you're going to win. The GM rolls a random encounter table, you're walking through the woods and 5 goblins jump out at you. All right, well, we're, level 6 adventurers. We're going to win. This is going to be an hour and we're going to beat this. It's no problem. In this system, yeah, that can still be true, especially these early encounters, these lower level ones, these incidental fights that start, maybe weren't planned to be a big set piece or whatever. Yeah, I'm a hero. I'm a fire mage. I'm going to solve this problem pyrotechnically. If I get careless and I take that injury, there's still a chance that things are going to stack up on me later. And it adds some weight and consequence, and then you find things that like maybe your character, your class, your build are better at. For example, we had one of my playtest characters is my favorite one. I always bring her up. But she was playing a Gorgon Berserker, which is like a barbarian in the fight, in the fray, take high risk, high reward type melee character. Blink Mage, which can teleport. She figured out really quick that all these immobilizing attacks that I was throwing at her really messing up her party. She didn't care. She could teleport. So her battle strategy, the second she realized that was kind of the bet the fight was taking, completely flipped. She was like, oh, I'm charging. I'm just going to teleport into the middle of the horde to try and decapitate them and then teleport out. And it wound up being this whole cinematic story driving type fight that I never planned for as a GM. I was just throwing a bunch of monsters up to see what happens.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing is, so there are two different things that I want to bring up because I think there's a concept of having a backup character.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're dealing with lingering and possibly lengthy injuries, you have a backup character created so that way you can slide right in and keep on playing, but with a different character. And the other one is the fact that all of the character classes are actually multi-class.
Correct.
So that Berserker Blink Mage, or Necromancer Fire Mage, or whatever, that's the way the character is actually crafted from the beginning.
Correct. So I'll touch on both of those. The backup character concept is one way to deal with those lingering injuries, right? So what we do is in the rules and the descriptions, the books and everything, I describe to the GM tools stuff. Hey, there's going to be situations where the party's got to decide, do we press on because events are not stopped? Do we press on even though we're hurt? Or do we retreat? And you've got to decide, all right, well, what did they accomplish and what did they not accomplish? Which I think for storytelling is just fun and interesting. But there are situations where it might be like the party overall wants to press on, but the character who got really beat up in that last fight wants to bow out. All right, tell them, okay, who's your friend? Who's the mercenary you hire at the bar? Who's the other adventurer from the other party who also got hurt? Who you combine together, and it lets the players, one, take out a new character, try out a different class, do something different, take some new risks. And then later on down the line, if someone dies, if you lose a character, whatever, well, we already know Steve. But Steve can come back. Did you like playing Steve? You didn't like Steve? Okay, do someone else. Or the player might decide we're going to press on, we're going to risk it, and see dice fall. And then, yeah, you mentioned the multi-class system is also the other big integral piece to Relic. When you create your character, I say they're multi-class by default. I think it's more accurate even to say that build a class. So the system has all of these classes in it. There's assassins, mages, there's dynamoncers, there's different mages and martial types and whatever. Still adding more. But you, Mike, when you want to make a character, you say, okay, I want to be a knight. I also, what if there's some skullduggery involved? I want to be a knight assassin. You can do that. Just take those two classes, you combine them together. That is your character. That becomes your character sheet. You choose which one of those you want to be what's called your major class or your minor class. And the way that works is your major class is what you're best at. So if your character he was a knight first and then he learned some spycraft later in his career, all right, you go knight assassin. Okay, great. Your knight skills are going to be your cheapest. Your assassin skills are going to have a cost multiplier on them. We use mana and stamina as a resource that you manage during combat encounters and role-playing and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a multiplier on your less proficient class, and you can, as you level up, remove that multiplier from specific skills as you go. So you can get all right, well, my knight is really, really good at crafting this one type of poison. Or you might say, actually, this was an assassin who became a lord and became a knight and did this, that, and the other thing, kind of the onion knight type character. All right, he's going to be an assassin first. That's going to be our major thing. My knight's going to be my secondary. That's a thing you're learning and getting better at. And now you've created a very different playing character, the same two combinations there. And it gets even crazier because you can do 3. Glaze over that.
Well, we'll save that for everyone to have a surprise.
Yeah.
From the standpoint, so this is the system that you have.
Yes.
Are you building a world to put the system in, or is this something that somebody could just, I'm sure somebody can just take this and put it in Forgotten Realms if they really wanted to.
You absolutely can. So I built it to be setting a, so Relic is made so you can play on a world that I create, you can play in your own world that you create, or you can look at, if you're willing to do a little tinkering and homebrewing and whatever if you need to, look at any adventure that you really like. Let's say you want to run Die Vecna Die. Go for it. You just build Relic characters and adapt some Relic monsters or try and convert in some old monsters into a Relic system. But you can absolutely do that. The system itself doesn't care what your setting is. We've even got some stuff on the roadmap for modern games or postmodern games or science fiction games or whatever. Because my last project was science fiction. as I mentioned, that all died in the OGL stuff. I'm not throwing that world. It's coming back. We're getting
Right, right.
but in terms of the worlds that I am creating, that is actually what our Kickstarter is doing right now. Is the starter kit. And what that is I've got the books and everything right here, but it's a condensed version of the rules there's a Game Master book. There's a player's book I got right here from some other type. And then as we hit more stretch goals, an increasing series of these adventure books, which are designed for new games, new tables, so new player and new GM. So they're written a little bit like, okay, this game, here's how we do. So that's what we're doing right now. It was initially going to be the 3 books, the GM screen, the box, et cetera, et cetera. But we've hit 2 stretch goals already, so there are 2 more adventures that are going in that kit. There'll be digital add-ons for anything that doesn't make the initial ship date. I don't want to delay everyone's orders because I keep adding stuff throughout the year. And then every new stretch goal we hit, we're going to add another adventure. So it's me and my brother writing most of these, and these are all kind of taking place mostly in one contiguous world that is being built out. And we will have some more information about that down the line. That's probably going to be a bigger secondary effort coming next year, but there is going to be a Relic first game world coming out around all this stuff. We need a little sample of it right now because we actually had a actual play show called Sounds Like Adventure reach out and want to run a game. We built that. That's on the Kickstarter page too. It's called 10 Silvers Bent.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Yeah. And they reached out about a month before the Kickstarter and were like, hey, we really like this. Want to do a game? And we were like, all right. So we recorded about a mini-series effectively. And we picked a corner of that world we're making and just fleshed it all out and ran them through this whole adventure there. And it was just an absolute blast. They're already talking about doing another one. Yay.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
you've great.
You've obviously been playtesting it, but then to have somebody outside of your trusted playtesting crew validate that they enjoy what you're doing has got to be very gratifying.
Extremely. It's it's one of those things. I think a lot of creators are familiar with this idea of, I feel really confident and happy with what I've made here. God, I hope I'm not crazy.
Yeah, it's basically a version of the imposter syndrome,
100%.
Like, am I?
Yeah, I always used to describe it as like, you have to kind of flip a switch between like imposter syndrome and megalomania a little bit. You got to be like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah. I'm so great at this. Okay, but what's wrong with it? Everything is terrible. It's just right. Like, that's this weird line you got to walk.
Well, absolutely. I mean, so everything that you, you as in everyone watching and me need to play is up on the website, which I'll link down below, but it's relicrpg.com. You can play it right now. But if you want some of the additional creative pieces that Chris is working on, I have a link down to the Kickstarter below so you can go and visit that and support his amazing work. And I can't wait to see what more you produce. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Chris. I can't wait to play myself.
So sorry. I would love to have you in a game. That'd be great.
Yeah, one of these days, for sure. I'll let everyone know if I decide to jump on and get killed or something. But thanks for coming on, Chris. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mike. You too.